Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing well today. It's a lovely sunny day. Glad you could join us today. I'm really excited. First off, to let you know, my name is Chandra and I work at the museum. And the Brown Bag Lecture is one of our programs that we put on a regular basis, and it runs from September until probably around the end of March each year, and we have different presenters from the community, and they speak on different topics from historical to environmental and ecological to what's going on in our community. And so I'm really glad to be able to welcome today. We have Sue Kirschmann and Lori Goldman, and they are both directors with First Things First, which is promoting climate solutions. And they're going to talk to us today about renewable natural gas. So I'm glad you could come out and find out about it. So without further ado, well, except for to remind you to turn off your cell phones, I will pass it over to Lori and Sue.
Thank you, Chandra. Well, it's really great to see everybody here today. And we recognize that our place is settlers on the ancestral and unceded Silk Okanagan territories. We're really grateful to be here today. Our topic is renewable natural gas, which is closely tied to natural gas, which is more familiar with people, so we'll start there. How many people heat their house with gas? Okay. And hot water too? Solar, nice. And do people know where our gas comes from? A couple of people know. Very down deep. So it's more accurate to call it fossil gas. And so today, rather than calling it natural gas, we're going to call it fossil gas.
Maybe just one comment on where natural gas comes from, the natural gas we use in our homes.
Yeah.
It's processed gas.
Yes, we're going to be talking about that today. We'll get there. Thank you. So most of our gas comes from northern and northeastern BC. Some of it comes from Alberta to Penticton, but for the most part it comes from up in the Peace, which is a beautiful area. A beautiful area that has lots of refineries. It's called the breadbasket of the North, and it is an agricultural area that now has 31,000 plus active wells. And most of that, those wells are getting the gas from shale, which is underneath the area. And over the last few decades, industrial development has totally transformed the region. We can see there's 39,000 kilometers of pipelines. There's 45,000 kilometers of roads. The fracking operations, this is pipelines and roads. We can see how it's dissecting the whole area. It really impacts the agriculture and the water systems up in the Peace area. Virtually all of the gas that is obtained is from hydraulic fracturing, which we will call fracking. That's the most common term.
And I'm going to, can you hear me okay? How's that? Great. I'm going to talk a bit about fracking. It's a complex industrial process, and I'm just going to give you a quick overview. A cocktail of water and chemicals is injected into the earth, and it creates little fissures in the rock, which force the fossil gas to come out. The gas moves to the surface, and then it's captured and it's taken away to be processed. So that's a really quick overview of fracking. This process has big impacts, both underground and on the surface. Many of the chemicals are quite toxic, and they often leak into the groundwater. The process can also trigger earthquakes, and you may have heard of fracking-induced earthquakes in the news up in this area. And this is one of the main reasons why other countries have banned fracking. Fracking also uses huge amounts of water, and this water becomes permanently contaminated. Sorry, my notes are not moving. Anyway, this is shows some of the fracking ponds that are dotted all over the Peace area. The contaminated water can leach into nearby creeks and rivers, and in fact the rates of cancer in that area in people, livestock, and wildlife have been found to be higher in fracking areas than elsewhere. Water shortages are also made worse, especially during droughts, because the fracking companies get first dibs on the water. So all in all, fracking is really having a negative impact on this beautiful area of the province. There's a great documentary that some of you may have seen called Fracking the Peace. And there's a 2-minute trailer that you can look up on YouTube that we encourage you to take a peek at. And if you are interested in seeing the full documentary, you can email us and we can arrange that for you, either do a showing ourselves or the group that produced it, we can connect you with them.
So most people have seen a diagram like this. It's just a very quick overview of what we call global warming and greenhouse gas emissions. So the sun's rays come into our earth and they can't get back out. So some escapes and some doesn't escape, and the greenhouse gases get trapped. And we're seeing this more and more. Last week we hit 2% above where we should be. So we are in a definite situation. It is not just CO2 that causes this problem. It's also methane. And methane is 85 times more dangerous than CO2. Fossil gas is mostly methane. And this is why we're always discussing this. And this is what's come up in the past while, is that our use of fossil gas is really impacting the heating of our world. And of course, this methane comes from wellheads, it comes from pipelines, and it also comes from homes and the buildings that we use. Fortis is hoping to get 10,000 new homes hooked on gas every year. And in BC, that's going to really impact, because those houses are hooked on that gas for 30, 40 years unless they are forced to retrofit, which will be very expensive. But that's a lot more methane going into our environment. So one of the places that we don't really think about it is the bad things that methane affects in the home. It releases methane, nitrogen oxide, and other gases. And Stanford scientists have done studies on gas from stoves, and there is unburned methane in our houses, which is why there is so much discussion about getting a stove out of your house, a gas stove out of your house. It's equivalent to having a smoker in the house, and we know from years ago that we stopped having people smoking in the house. Secondhand smoke is so toxic to us. The effects can be asthma, heart attacks, cancer. I have a friend up in Peachland who was suffering with asthma for years and years. She's a nurse, and she finally took her gas stove out of her house and found within a year that her health totally improved, and she's just a confirmed believer in an induction range now. I have one at my house and I just love it. So what about renewable natural gas?
So, Fortis is promoting renewable natural gas as an alternative to fossil gas. I'll talk a little bit about where it comes from, what it is, and its viability to reduce emissions. Renewable natural gas is, the term itself is actually a marketing term that was created in North America. The rest of the world calls it biomethane. I'm going to call it RNG, or renewable natural gas, today because everyone's familiar with that term. So the gas is produced when plant and animal waste breaks down without oxygen, so in an anaerobic setting. And this could include industrial farms, landfills, wastewater treatment plants, and waste wood from forestry operations. The gas is captured and impurities are removed, so it's processed to remove CO2 and other impurities to create RNG, which is about 96% methane. And that is very similar to fossil gas, which is about just a little bit more than 96% methane. And this makes sense because both fossil gas and RNG come from organic matter. Fossil gas is from fossils, and RNG is from more recent plant and animal matter. You'll notice that I have RNG in quotes here, and that's because it isn't really renewable. Plants, especially trees, take months or years to grow. They're not instantly replaced like sunlight, wind, and water are, which are renewable. There are situations where renewable natural gas can help to reduce emissions. And a local example of this is Kelowna's landfill. It captures methane that would otherwise go into the atmosphere. Just a note though, not 100% of it is captured. I actually heard this morning on CBC that Kelowna's landfill is capturing just 60% of the gas that's emitted. Best uses for methane, or for RNG, are on-site. Another example, in Toronto, at their landfill, they use biogas to fuel garbage trucks. On a farm, RNG can be used to heat greenhouses, or fuel tractors, or farm trucks. And other good uses are as a fuel for generators instead of diesel, which is extremely dirty. And in industries like concrete making, where it's really hard to reduce emissions in other ways. Fortis is proposing to heat homes with RNG, and we don't feel that this is a good idea. There are a number of ways in which it harms the environment. Lori has already mentioned methane leakage, which happens with fossil gas. Equally, if you put it into pipelines, RNG is also going to contribute to methane leakage. And all of this methane goes into the environment and makes global warming worse. Renewable natural gas has the same negative health effects as fossil gas does when it's burned inside our homes and transported into our homes. And most importantly, there are very few sources of RNG in British Columbia, and they're spread throughout the province. So each of these sites would need a processing plant to be built and new pipelines to transport the gas to the existing pipeline. And all of this new construction is often not talked about, but it creates emissions too. And as you would guess, it's expensive. And this is partly why renewable natural gas is about 8 times more expensive than fossil gas. With the cost of everything going up these days, we wanted to talk a little bit more about this cost aspect.
So this is the latest graph that Fortis has on their website. And this is what they're promoting. We were just in a very interesting webinar this morning, and the last thing he said was everybody should sign on to get RNG into their home. And the only problem is that when you sign on, if you're signing on for 5% or 50% or 100%, you're paying for that over and above what your cost is. You get a little bit of a discount because you don't pay for the carbon tax, but you're paying a lot more to get this RNG into your house. I was really excited when I saw this last year or the year before, and I said, I'm going to get 100% RNG into my house. And I called them up, and as I was talking to the person and trying to figure out how my costs were going to go up, I said, can you tell me, how do they get those molecules of RNG just to my home? Oh, she said, oh, they can't do that. And I said, then what am I paying for? I said, this sounds like a subsidy to Fortis. And she said, And when I was in a meeting with the Fortis executive, I said, could you explain this to me? Why would I be paying for this if I'm not getting that into my house? And they are saying that if somebody has a new house and they sign up for RNG, they're going to get 100% to their house and they won't pay the carbon tax. And he said to me, it's kind of like a survey. And, you know, so that we know how many people want to be using RNG. And I said, I think you should do a survey and we shouldn't be paying for it. And he didn't say much to me. So it's a very confusing system because they want us to subsidize them to develop RNG, but we're actually not receiving it. And right now in the system, there's only 1 to 3% of RNG running around our pipelines in BC. They want to increase it, but even by 2050, what did he say today? It'll be 50%? 15% by 2050. But taxpayers are going to be paying for all of these new facilities. It's not going to just come from Fortis. So we have to be aware that the costs will be rising. So what's our future? Is it going to be heat? Is it going to be fire? Are we going to have more floods and landslides? But you know, it doesn't have to be because we have solutions. And that's a really great thing. We care about the environment. All of us care that we're going to have a healthy environment for our kids and our grandkids and the generations coming. So we know that using the RNG in the house, we know that developing RNG is not really an idea. We know that putting RNG into any new houses are not a good idea, but we have lots of other ways that we can make things better, and that's with electrification. And we have hydro, which is really clean in BC. We also are moving to microgrids and more solar, like we have up in Summerland. They opened up last week, the grand opening of their solar and battery storage. And that's going, there are more of those all around the province that are taking care, adding to the electric grid. BC Hydro is very confident that what we have now is going to handle all of our demand, and so that we know that we can reduce emissions in our homes. We also have geothermal, and so many big developments like up in Kelowna are building houses that are totally on a geothermal grid, so they're getting all of their power from the heating and from the ground.
So when we talk about electrifying homes, we're mainly talking about installing heat pumps. And I just want to talk a little bit about heat pumps because they have been in the news quite a bit, and I know a lot of people have questions about them. So just a quick overview of how they work. They work a lot like your fridge. In the winter, they take the warm air from the outdoors and they transfer it. They basically just bring the warm air and transfer it inside. And in the summer, they can be reversed to do the opposite. They take the warm air from in your house and they dump it outside, which cools off your home. Because the air is moved passively, you're not burning a fuel, they're 2 to 4 times more efficient than conventional types of heating, such as gas and electric baseboard. And as Lori mentioned, there's like ground source heat pumps, which is what they're doing in, I think it's Wildwood, up in the Kelowna area and a few other areas. And those use heat pumps as well, but because the air is coming from the ground, which stays a constant temperature, more constant than our air outside, they're even more efficient. They're 3 to 5 or 6 times as efficient. And this greater efficiency means you're using less electricity, so your costs are lower. So both heating and cooling are cheaper with a heat pump. Right now, we're in a building boom with all the housing shortages. And if you build new homes with heat pumps, instead of hooking them up to gas, that will avoid expensive retrofits in the future. So this is one of the things First Things First is encouraging the Penticton Council to adopt bylaws that favor heat pumps in all new homes.
Another thing that we hear with heat pumps, we get a lot of pushback that they don't work in cold temperatures, but you know, they're using them all around Norway. They're using them in the Kootenays with no problem. They go down to -30. And so people are finding that a lot of the conversation that we hear about them is not real anymore, that the heat pumps that are in our system are quite able to handle our winters here, and that they have a backup heat anyway, so that if it gets to where they're not able to do the process of the change, they have electric system which will then be blown into the house. Not only that, we have electric heat pump hot water heaters as well. Those, especially in a new house, it's quite easy to install them. They have to have so much air around them to be able to transfer the air and turn it into heating the hot water. I can't have that in my mobile home because I don't have the space to put it in and have it use the air from around around the unit. So I had to put in an electric hot water heater. It was quite a relief, and my gas bill went way down, and my electric costs did not go up that much with just a standard hot water heater. I was very happy to get rid of that. It was right beside where I sit and do my office work. I had the hot water heater right there, so I'm quite happy to have that out. So the change in the bylaws, right now in BC, the government has brought in zero carbon step code. And there are 4 different levels. The first one is to watch and see what happens, not very useful. The second one is to not have either a furnace or a hot water heater. And so that would reduce the emissions quite a bit. The third level is to have no gas furnace, no gas hot water, that's all. You can still have your stove if you want one, and a fireplace if you think you need backup, and a barbecue. And I believe the 4th level is just no gas at all coming to your house.
You can still have a gas backup. You can still have a gas fireplace.
And gas barbecue, I guess so. So right now, next week, the city planners are going to the OCP Housing Task Force to try to get them to approve that we move faster than what the province wants. The province wants it, they've mandated that it has to be in by 2030, but there are I don't know where it is. Yeah, there are 16 municipalities that have already moved to either have it come in next year, or they're working on it. It's going through the process. So what they've given is the all of the builders. There's a bit of pushback from builders because they think it's going to be more expensive or it'll be too difficult. But it actually reduces the building time, because if you're just putting in heat pumps without a ducted system, that can be done in a 1/5 of the time of putting in all of the other system for fossil gas. And so they are moving to have a 6-month level 1, which is looking at things and monitoring, which can be done technologically, and then moving to level 2, level 3, or level 4. It depends on what the city wants. And we're encouraging them to go to level 3, which would be no gas furnace and no gas hot water. But you can have all the other things. This picture shows what a house would look like. There's step 1, step 2, step 3, step 5. This is for the outside of the building. So the builders build a house that is more insulated, more emissions reducing. And that's what you see up at the top. So step 5. But if you don't have any fossil gas coming to your house, no matter what your envelope is, your emissions are really low. It's only a good thing. want to do the summary?
Sure. Yeah, I guess just a little summary. Our main takeaways from today that we just wanted to reinforce are that fossil gas is methane, that it's a powerful greenhouse gas, which causes global warming, and also that this RNG that Fortis is promoting is also methane. It just comes from a different source, from plant and animal waste instead of from fossils. Both are potent greenhouse gases, and particularly using renewable natural gas in homes is a bad idea for a number of reasons. The best way to heat our homes is with electricity, and we are fortunate in BC to have abundant, clean hydroelectric that can be supplemented with solar, which we also have in abundance in the Okanagan. And we do have wind, and there are more wind farms planned in the future by a number of the First Nations bands. So I don't think we have anything else other than questions.
Yeah, just questions. Yes, Beth? That's true. If we were just suddenly like that, everybody on electricity and plugging in their cars and everything was just magically electrical, that would actually be a problem. The difficulty is, that, or the easy thing is that we have enough capacity now. We actually have extra electricity in our system. Last year we had an overabundance. And so as people change gradually to retrofit their homes or to build with electricity or to put in charging stations, they are also going to be expanding the system, and they have full confidence that as they are working and developing, because they know we need electricity, so they're not just sitting and waiting, they're working on actively creating more electricity in the province, and that we will be able to handle all of the new things that are coming on that will be drawing on our electric grid.
Yes. Sorry, can I just add a little bit to that? Certainly. The other thing too is that, for example, the electric baseboard heaters, they use a lot more energy than a heat pump. So as some of the homes retrofit, you're actually going to have your electricity demand decrease. Likewise, the fossil fuel industry uses a ton of electricity. So if our demand for gas decreases and the amount we're producing decreases, that will also free up electricity. So it's two things. It's the grid is being enhanced, and our with efficiency measures in that is also being decreased.
Yes.
So you decided you wanted to switch?
No, it was the same size. If you had a heat pump hot water heater, you have to have more space to handle the conversion of the heat, air around your heat pump hot water heater to make it function properly. I didn't get a heat pump one because I have a mobile home, so I just took my gas one out, which was about 11 or 12 years old. I was quite happy to get rid of it, and I just put in $1,000 one. If I was trying to get a rebate to get rid of that, I would only have been able to get the money if I was getting a heat pump hot water heater, and I was not very nice to them on the telephone. And so I just had to pay for that out of pocket. But I got the least expensive one, which was a energy smart whatever, and I have to feel comfortable with that because it's not gas, and I was quite happy with that. We do have, Fortis is building a pipeline beside our city to increase capacity. This is what they want to do. It's at the BC Utilities Commission right now. And that is because there are going to be more people hooking up to gas. In 2020, they estimated that cost would be $220 or $240 million. That's a long time ago. Things have changed. That $400 million could easily be going into generating electricity and just not put in that pipeline. That's my take on it. What were you going to ask?
I live in this big heat exchangers.
I wouldn't be able to speak to that. That would be a good question to ask.
I have seen, up at UBC Okanagan, all the residences, they're all heat pumps. There's no gas. And there are a number of apartments and condos and that all over the province, and they just have multiple heat pumps, like they have a bank of that. Yeah.
The Modesto, or whatever it's called here on Fairview, has transferred to individual heat pumps that are on the roof, but I wouldn't be able to speak to whether they could change the boiler into something like that.
There are also units that sort of go up near the ceiling and are outside, inside heat pumps.
Yes, the unit is outside, just like we had here. They just sit outside. I mean, in China, everybody has a heat pump. They don't know from what we're doing. So every 20-story building has a heat pump, and they've got the ductless heads inside. And I mean, that's just normal. And they're air conditioning and cooling. Except if it's in the north with Beijing, and they use hot water through every single home. It goes through the floor, and that's coal fired. Not very good. Yeah.
Yeah, I recently saw somewhere in an article that you can get these little small heat pumps that you can put on your balcony if you're in an apartment. I think it was in Europe, but it's, you know, another technology that's out there that would be great for people who are renting or who own a condo and the whole building isn't converting, but you can yourself. So that's something else to look out for.
Well, I'm on the income qualified program because my income is low, and so I get extra help. So if you're not on that program, if you look on the Clean BC website and you call up the coach, because it's easier to talk to a human and have them help you. There is so much for a heat pump, and there's so much for a heat pump hot water heater, and some of those require you, like for me, I think it would require me to disconnect my gas furnace and remove it, and that was kind of awesome because they're going to have to go beside my house and haul that big machine away from behind my house. It's kind of scary. So we actually need to have coaches in Penticton, and our city is looking at that. Our sustainability person is looking at having somebody here who can do that kind of guidance on an individual level here, which will really help. There's also the Greener Homes Grant, and there's a grant, and there's also rebate, I think, from the federal government. Once you are approved there, then you can get $40,000 or something as a low interest loan, and I'm not sure about the detail because it's overwhelming, but it's there. And there's also, so you can get your rebates from two sources for the same product. If you're getting your heat pump, you can have a BC rebate, you can have a federal rebate, and we have somebody in Nanaimo who is really getting the government in BC to change regulation so that the people who are installing heat pumps under this contract, I can only go to a certain list of contractors to put my heat pump in. I can't go to anybody else or I won't get the money. Those people say, okay, so your house is about this big and this is what you need, and it's going to be $20,000 for 3 heads. And they all say about the same, and they say, you're going to be getting $9,000 back because you're income qualified. And so what he found was that we were getting ripped off. And he had a 3,000 square foot house or something. He's got 2 units, lots of heads, and he put the whole thing in and spent $1,500 because he got his Greener Homes rebate, he got his BC income qualifying rebate, and he found a contractor who would give him only the heat pump cost and the labor for the day, because it only took a day to install. And so he was charged something like $11,500 total, and he got most of that back. So we're working with him to try to get somebody in this area to actually not just do a total cost, but to do a breakdown, because most of them don't tell you that. How much is the machinery? It's all part of the package. Yeah, but how much is that unit? They won't tell you. Yes?
I'm curious.
I went up to the solar installation, to the grand opening up in Summerland last week, and I was talking to all of the installers and to the aldermen, councillors, and our mayor, and, you know, saying we got to have this here. And what Skyfire said was that the rec building that we have could totally be exactly the same as the Summerland, producing all that electricity. And so what we need to do, the people here, is to call them up, email them and say, please move faster on this. You get the $6 million from the federal government. Go get that money so that we can install solar all around the city and be generating power here. We do have a manager of energy and environment, that's Drayden Power, and he's working really hard on getting the city to have microgrids so that we will have solar and we will be feeding into our own electrical system because we own our utility here. And if we were doing that, our costs would be greatly reduced. So he's really working on that with battery storage.
We're fortunate in Penticton, like Summerland, and a couple other cities in the province to own our own utility. Most don't, and so they have to depend on BC Hydro to provide, or Fortis to provide electricity. But because we own our own power, we can do these creative solutions more easily.
So that was a question that I asked last week at the grand opening, and Skyfire was very confident that these panels that they have put in Summerland are going to have 20 or 25 years life, and almost all of it is recyclable except for some of the silicone parts. All of the metal is recyclable, and they will be, there's a place I think he said in the States, and one in Alberta may be coming on, because there are many more solar panels that need to be recycled, and that is becoming a new industry because of that. So I think that, because I was worried too, there's all of this problem with what do you do with your batteries? What do you do with all of these things? And it was the same with the battery storage that they have up there, which is from Quebec, that they are able to be repurposed. And if not up there, then they get used in another situation that doesn't require so much capacity.
The question is all the dead trees and that are in the forest, and are they releasing methane? And should we be cleaning those up and using them? Methane is created when the plant and animal matter breaks down without oxygen. So when we bury it in our landfills, when we have it in giant piles of poop on a cattle ranch or an industrial type farm, with our wastewater treatment, it's man-made systems where we're putting organic matter in a setting where it's anaerobic. So in the forest, it's decomposing with oxygen like it does in our home composts, and it's just releasing CO2. It's not creating methane. So that's one of the issues. If Fortis is trying to increase production of methane in order to put it into our pipelines, we're creating more methane than we need to. But if it's already being produced, like if we do have landfills with organics buried in them, that's when it does make sense to try and capture it and then try and use it right there. But the danger of artificially creating more methane is a real problem.
And they're also burning like trees, like they're cutting down trees to make them into pellets to burn them and to use them for biomethane and stuff. I think that it's just a way of keeping their investors happy, but we're all going to pay the price either with our health or our environment or just with our money. Yes, for sure, you should have an energy audit before you do anything, and especially you have to. If you're using greener homes or you're using Clean BC, you have to have an energy audit to make sure that you don't have other issues that you need to remediate. And some other people don't have enough power coming to their house, so they may have to increase their power supply. One other thing Drayden said is that with some people who have a smart meter, you can see when you're drawing more power and drawing less power, and you can adjust your life that way so that you could have a heat pump and your other electrical items by using things differently without increasing, or like some people have to get new power from the road to their house. That's many thousands of dollars, and it might not be worthwhile.
I just thought it was a good idea to get it checked out first.
Absolutely, yeah. And if we had a guide here, like a coach, he could help with that. I mean, I had my energy audit done. They gave me all this information. I'm sorry, I'm a grammar teacher. I looked at it and I said, I don't understand. What is the first thing I do? What is the second thing I do? What do I do here? And they said, well, you could do all of these things. And I said, this is beyond me. So I have an electric hot water heater. That's what I could manage. We can do what we can do.